And the much-anticipated debate is about to begin here. You don't think it's much anticipated?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. All
Exciting.
Right. Very exciting. George Phillips, Claudia Tenney, and Stephen Wells all in studio. And Manaski, I'd like you to explain. We have Alex Gerald from the Observer-Dispatch, who's sitting over there. Good morning, Alex. Mark Baracco from WTR, who's just to my right. And, of course, Jeff Manaski. These guys will be asking the questions. In terms of time, why don't you explain what the ground rules are that have all been agreed upon by each of the candidates?
Right. So I had sent the format to the candidates. It'll be 90 seconds per answer, 45 seconds on the rebuttal. We will go in an order we just determined in the green room a few minutes ago. Claudia will be candidate A. Stephen Wells will be candidate B. George Phillips will be candidate C. Excuse me, that's Claudia Tenney A, Stephen Wells B, George Phillips C. And we will rotate from there. And I think that's pretty much it. And you already introduced the panel. So. And
rebuttals, do they have
45
that
seconds.
45 second rebuttals.
As well. Andrew has the clock. Andrew's keeping the clock. He's got a yellow card. When he puts up the card, each of the candidates, if you could kind of finish your statement or your thought there, we'd like to keep on time the best we can.
If you hear the bell, that means you have 10 seconds left. Is that right, Andrew? Yes. And then if you get an electric shock, that means you've gone over. That's how we're going to. I think we'll be okay. All right, we ready to go? Let's begin with Alex Gerald from the Observer-Dispatch.
Oh, we have an opening statement from each of the candidates.
Oh, we do. Okay, let's start with.
It'll be Claudia Tenney, candidate A,
the Assemblywoman.
First, I'd like to just say my thoughts and my prayers are with the victims and the families in Orlando. I think we're all thinking of them today, and I hope that we continue to think of them as we run for this very important position. I'd spent my entire life in this community. My father was a Supreme Court justice who served honorably for 35 years. My mother's family started our family business in 1946 in Norwich and in Hamilton. We've expanded into Oneida and Herkimer County and throughout this community. We ran a newspaper and we run a family business that's a manufacturing facility. I live across the street from the house I grew up in. I cared for my parents. I raised my son as a single mother. He graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy, and he's a first lieutenant serving honorably in the Marine Corps. I ran our family newspaper. I was also an attorney, and I did it honorably, and I gave the people in this community a voice, an alternative to the media that we had out there. When I went to Albany in 2010, I ran against and defeated the Oneida County Republican chair, who is now joining Ray Halberter in the Grow Economy PAC, who is putting out all of these flyers and millions of dollars in advertising that he did in 2014 and again in 2016 this year to stop an independent outside voice from getting to Congress. And that's why I'm running. I stood in Albany against the corruption. I was the first to call for Sheldon Silver's resignation, and I stood against the SAFE Act. My opponents are the establishment, and they're trying to defeat me here today, and that's why Grow Economy PAC is behind them, and they are doing nothing to stop the smear campaign.
All right, the second candidate that will be is Stephen Wells.
Well, thank you. First, I'd also echo Claudia's comments about that our thoughts and prayers are with the families in Orlando. And let me turn now and thank you, Bill, for hosting, and thank Jeff and Mark and Alex for being here and asking questions. You know, I've born and raised here in upstate New York. I live here with my wife and 2 kids, and I've never served in political office. I've never run for political office, but I've essentially had 2 jobs. First as a prosecutor, where I dealt with violent crime, rapes, robbery, murder, kidnapping, the worst of humanity. And then a quarter century ago, my brother and I started a business, a food service business right here in upstate New York. And we've grown that business to have over 1,500 employees, 1,500 jobs we've created, and over 650 of them are right here in upstate New York. Pretty proud of that because it's not so easy. I know firsthand what it's like to do business here in upstate New York. We do business in every county, all the 8 counties in this 22nd Congressional District, and I've had to deal with all the bad policies out of Albany and Washington. The reason that I'm running is, and you see it on my website, the reason I named our website wellsforsecurity.com and our committee is because I'm concerned about the direction of this country, the economic security and the national security direction that our country has taken. We've got to get back on track, and I hope we'll get to talk about that today and what we can do right here at Rome at the front and center of both of those, the economic and national security issues. So thank you for having me, Bill.
All right, Stephen Wells. Next up is George Phillips.
I'd like to thank the whole team here for hosting this debate. I'd like to thank the other candidates, and I'd like to thank the listeners for tuning in on this day of great national mourning when flags are being flown at half-mast across the country. Our thoughts and prayers are with all the victims. My name is George Phillips. I'm an American history teacher who prides himself on teaching the Constitution. And I've been teaching long enough now to see my students graduate not just high school but college, and year after year I see students leave the area, leave the state. I think we all have family and friends who we wish could be here in upstate New York but aren't because of the economic situation. I'm running for Congress because I want to make things better. I think we need a bold, positive vision for America to get things back on track. I'm running for Congress on an upstate jobs plan, tax and regulatory relief on the federal level that the state would have to match to get our economy going again here and growing jobs. I've been endorsed recently by the American Conservative Union, the oldest and most well-respected conservative organization in the country. I was endorsed by the former Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Anthony Principi, and I was endorsed by Steve Forbes, a former presidential candidate and a great leader for the conservative cause. The most important endorsement I'm seeking is that of the individual voters in this district, and I want to thank them again for taking time to listen in, and we're looking forward to this debate.
All right. Jeff, next up, we begin with the questions. Again, our panelists, Jeff Bonaski, of course, from this program, WIBX. Mark Baracco is from WTR. And Alex Gerald is with the Observer-Dispatch.
Thank you. The order for this question, will be Claudia first, Stephen Wells second, and George Phillips third. On the heels of the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history, each of you has recognized the victims in your opening statement. The gunman in this case is identified as an American-born U.S. citizen. While he was interviewed by the FBI 3 times in the past few years, he was never charged. He reportedly made legal gun purchases as recently as last week. Is federal action needed in this case to make it more difficult, in a case like this, to make it more difficult to purchase a firearm? Claudia Tenney, you're first.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, obviously it's a tragedy, and that someone is an American citizen that's doing this is terrible for our citizens. But right now, the problem is not legal gun owners, it's illegal gun owners. And this man was able to purchase a gun based on false information. If our FBI and some of our law enforcement agencies were allowed to properly follow up on many of these issues, we wouldn't have this. Also, if we secured the border and we provided legitimate means to prevent people who are of this, obviously this person was motivated by a number of things. It looks like he was, a radical Islamic terrorist, or had intentions to be that. He committed that plus a hate crime. Restricting legal gun ownership to legal gun owners is not the answer, but making sure that when we do background checks, which we do on everyone, as someone who has purchased numerous guns in my life, I go through a background check every time. The problem is in following through on those background checks on the federal level, and that's something that I would advocate for, that we continue to make sure that that's happening properly. Apparently there was a mistake or some kind of loophole down in Florida. That's the mistake. It's not the fact that legal gun owners have the right to bear arms.
All right.
Wells?
Well, I think we have to understand why people engage in this kind of behavior. And the issue is not the gun. Look, the gun has been around since the time that the country began. And the repeating firearm, I don't see how that we would want to put companies like Remington right here in our district out of business. The issue here is why did this person make this deadly and horrific choice? And I think that we can look to how other countries, such as the Israelis, deal with issues like this. I mean, why did this person we need a more robust counterintelligence system. We need to look at mental health. We are clearly not dealing with mental health issues. We should be monitoring the internet better. I mean, there's lots of things that we can be doing, but banning the firearm is not the solution to the problem. It may make people feel good, but it's not only does it violate our constitutional rights, but it's not going to solve the underlying problem.
And George Phillips.
We have a tragedy, an Islamic fundamentalist terrorist who's willing to go into a nightclub and kill over 50 people. His intention was certainly to kill a lot more. He had no regard for innocent human life, and different laws that the anti-gun or pro-gun control crowd will call for, if he's going to commit this most horrific act, he would certainly have gotten a gun illegally. I am concerned about our counterintelligence, that we weren't able to stop him, to apprehend him, as the FBI was following him. But we have to realize the power of evil in this world and confront it here domestically and internationally as well.
All right. Next panelist asking the questions would be Alex Gerald. Do we have a rebuttal? Anyone?
If any of the candidates, you have 45 seconds if you'd like to add to or clarify any of your statements. Claudia, Tenney, you could go first.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out again that this is not a mistake of the gun. It's as you know, I'm a strong proponent of gun rights and our Second Amendment. I was the first to call for the repeal of the SAFE Act. Many provisions in the SAFE Act allege to provide for background checks and mental health issues. They've done nothing. Gun violence has increased in New York City since the SAFE Act was passed, so it did nothing to stop the illegal flow of guns to people who would do horrific crimes like this. So again, I agree with Steve Wells. It's not the gun that is the problem. It is the people behind this, and the SAFE Act did nothing to do that, and I was the first to call for repeal in Albany. And our federal government needs to do a better job, and I thank you.
Stephen.
Yeah, I have nothing further to add.
And George?
And I've said what I'd like to say, certainly about the horrific murder. I do have an A rating from the NRA. I'm an American history teacher who teaches the Constitution, and I certainly commend all our law-abiding citizens who are teaching gun safety, who are working to promote safety and self-defense, and that would be what I'd like to say on this issue.
Okay. Next up, Alex Gerald is a reporter with the Utica Observer-Dispatch.
There's a heroin and opioid painkiller abuse epidemic sweeping the nation, with the number of overdoses rising. What should the federal government's role be in fighting this abuse with drugs?
All right, starting
Stephen Wells.
Stephen Wells.
Yeah, well, as a prosecutor, first of all, I'm the only one up here who knows firsthand and has dealt firsthand with dealing with the drug problem and dealing with the opioid problem. With regard to the Congress, I think, first of all, Congressman Kakko, has a good plan right now out that we should seriously consider. And the first part is funding prevention and prescription drug monitoring programs. And the second piece is, obviously, we've got to combat drug trafficking at the border. You know, the opioids, we don't grow poppies here in the United States. So clearly they're infiltrating the country. So interdiction is one piece, but it's never proven effective by itself. Obviously, we've not stopped the flow of illegal drugs. So, there's a big issue right now with synthetic drugs, as you probably know, and we've got to have change our laws to make it easier to control and tackle these synthetic drugs. Too often, immediately, it's not just meth labs being cooked, but with opioids that they're producing synthetics very quickly. And we've got to deal with the treatment facility, allowing. We're just not adequately dealing with the treatment facility. But again, it comes back to my earlier issue about the gun issue. We've got to figure out why people are making these horrific choices in their lives. Why is somebody willing to stick a needle in their arms? We've got to deal with that. That's the fundamental issue here.
All right, George Phillips.
This is a really emotional issue for so many of us. As I mentioned, I'm a history teacher, and one of our former students died recently from a heroin overdose. He was from a wonderful family and just made some poor decisions. And sadly, day after day in our newspapers, we're seeing more young people and people of all ages dying from this. I will, as United States Congressman, support state and local law enforcement efforts to combat this problem and treatment programs, but we have to go to the source. The source is Mexico right now, and we're not getting the job done at the border or destroying the crop in Mexico. I've laid out a bold plan saying that we need to take the model of Plan Colombia. Plan Colombia was heavy amounts of U.S. money invested into Colombian security, the Colombian government, to destroy the cocaine crop that was coming in massive quantities. We had tremendous success in Colombia. You don't hear about cocaine deaths as much. The cocaine rate is down. We've given similar equipment to the government of Mexico, but they are not getting the job done. We need to demand that our relations with the government in Mexico are contingent upon their ability to destroy heroin at its source and to help better secure the border. We need more agents on the border, but we need to destroy heroin at its source. That's a critical aspect of this problem in defeating heroin.
All right, Assemblyman Tenney.
Yeah, I am also an attorney, and I've been Steve's not the only one who's been involved with people who have sadly been involved with drug addiction. I've been involved with clients who've been before many of the drug courts here in Oneida County and throughout the region. As a member of the State Assembly, we took a year-long study into the problems with opioid and heroin addiction. We put out a bold plan for how to solve this problem on the state level, which is where it's supposed to be and where our tax dollars should be focused. We dealt with the heroin addict, their families, the insurance issues, and all aspects of this, from the care providers, everyone in the social worker field to deal with this issue. We've put out a bold plan. We're putting the pressure on the Democrats in the Assembly to come out with something, and hopefully next week we will have something that will be passed that will help us to curb this problem and find a future for some of those people who are suffering, not just the heroin addicts, but their families, their co-workers in our communities.
All right, anyone rebuttal?
Yes, I mean, with all due respect to the Assemblywoman, Albany has been asleep at the switch on this, and so is Washington for that matter. I mean, this has gone on for decades. This isn't really a new problem. It's only become an epidemic, particularly with heroin. But the drug problem has gone on. And the fact of the matter is people have known with the proliferation of drugs, heroin that doctors have been prescribing. I mean, they've been asleep at the switch. Doctors themselves are asking for restrictions on pain medication. I mean, I've heard it directly from the chairman of Upstate Medical Center. I mean, the Assembly, the Senate in Albany is asleep at the switch, and so is Washington. They've done nothing on this. They're late to the party. We've got to move on it immediately.
George?
This is a national tragedy. I've laid out a bold plan to confront heroin at its source and support state and local law enforcement. Let's look at other aspects here. It's not just people without means that are using heroin. We had a professor at the community college I teach at die of an overdose. But if we could get the economy growing again, I've laid out an upstate jobs plan. I think people who are working, who are ably employed, will be less likely to get depressed and get into drugs. And I know that's not everyone. We do have people with means who are getting addicted as well. And we've got to move from welfare to work as well. I've called for striking the term welfare from the U.S. Code and replacing it with work empowerment. We need to get Americans working again. And I do think if the economy grows, if we have Americans working again, you're going to see that impact the drug problem as well.
All right. And Assemblywoman Tenney.
Yes, with all due respect, Steve, you are the insider in this thing. You're the one who donated $10,000 to Governor Cuomo after the SAFE Act was passed, after the corrupt Oneida deal, after the Speaker and the Majority Leader were sent to prison or will be sent to prison. Everyone knows I am not the insider in Albany. I'm not part of the problem there. I'm the one calling out the corruption. Ask your friend Governor Cuomo to stand up and pass the laws that were passed and the proposals by the Assembly minority. Those that we're outnumbered 107 to 43, Republican to Democrat in the state Assembly. We are fighting the good fight. In no way am I an insider. You are the insider, and it's insulting to the public for you to try to act as if the independent person here, has something to do with the Albany corruption. I haven't funded Cuomo's campaigns. You have.
Next we bring in, we're going to go to another topic. If somebody wants to respond to that, they'll have that opportunity. That was the rebuttal. So WTR's Mark Baracco is stepping in now with a question. Go ahead, Mark.
All right, Bill, thank you, and good morning to the three of you. Over the past few weeks, we've seen two high school valedictorians in the state of Texas announce that they were unauthorized illegal immigrants living here in the United States. I think it's something that has, there's been quite a response to that, both positively and negatively. From their announcements, does this change at all your views on immigration in terms of seeing that there are people that, while their circumstances might be very unique, are trying to do what is right for both their families and for themselves, for their growth? I'm not sure who takes that first.
Start with George on that.
George, go.
Well, first, we know that there are millions of people here illegally in the United States, but I'd also say we have to have respect for the millions of people who are trying to get in this country legally and are waiting in line and are doing applications and are following due process of law, and we have to respect them. I'm against amnesty for illegal immigrants. I've said we need to focus on E-Verify. Why can any one of us in this room or any one of our listeners take an international trip and have an ATM card from a local bank and get money out at that bank, and yet our employers and our government can't come up with a system where we could verify that we have employees working here legally? That's one major issue we have. We need more security at the border. We've heard our presidential candidate candidates talk about building a wall that's been authorized already. What I've said is I think we could do it more quickly and economically efficiently with electronic surveillance, but we do need to secure the border. We do need to not give a free pass to those who are here illegally.
All right, Assemblywoman Tenney.
Yeah, this is a huge, and one of the top issues is, yes, we feel sympathy. We know people want to come to this country because they want a better way of life. But unfortunately, there are many people coming to this country who are not coming to live the American dream, to revere our Constitution, to value individual rights and freedom. They're here to take advantage of our system. And that's something that is caused by not just an open border in Mexico, but an open border right here in New York. And we need to secure the borders and keep American citizens here who want to assimilate and want to be part of the American dream. Though I feel great sympathy for anyone who wants to better themselves, we have to take care of the people who are here first. And in the Assembly, I voted against the DREAM Act. That's something that would take tuition assistance program, taxpayer money, and give that to illegal immigrants over legal taxpayers and people who are funding our system. That's wrong, and I will fight against that in Washington.
Stephen Wells.
Yeah, like I've said from the beginning that this country is founded on immigration. All of us are children of immigrants at one time or another, and the fact is we continue to need to have legal immigration, and therein is the distinction. We've talked about the problems at the border. We can talk more about them, but clearly it's not only drugs that are trying to infiltrate the country, that are infiltrating the country. It's also dangerous people who have a desire to hurt us, to kill us. That's the reality. So we need immigration, but we need legal immigration. We need to be doing a much better job at the border.
Rebuttal, 45 seconds.
I wanted to relate
Starting with George
immigration to the economy and jobs. We have a 62% workforce participation rate right now. It's the lowest level since the 1970s. We've got to get Americans working again. As I've talked about going from welfare to work, if a factory closes down and someone's laid off, there should be benefits for a very short period of time. If you haven't found a job after that, you should be working again, whether it's doing volunteer work, visiting the elderly at a nursing home, helping clean our community up. We need to get America working again, and I think that's something that relates to this immigration situation, because people say, oh, we need the immigrant labor supply. We have millions of Americans who aren't working and should be. There's dignity with work, and we need to overhaul our welfare system, stripe welfare from the U.S. Code, and make sure every able-bodied person is working.
Assemblywoman Tenney.
Yeah, just to dovetail on that, we have a huge problem in this country, and that problem is that we are allowing people to come into this country through visas, through certain types of work visas, to take jobs away from American citizens. And though they're called technical and they're H-1B visas, these people are coming into this country and taking jobs from us. And that's something that I would oppose as a member of Congress. It deals directly with the trade issue. It goes directly into immigration issues. We should allow our American citizens, especially many of our students are graduating with what they call STEM majors, science, technology, engineering, and math. Those jobs are going to foreign nationals instead of our locals. We have a glut of students that are STEM majors that need jobs in the United States. They should take preference over any person coming in here through any kind of visa.
And finally, Stephen Wells.
Again, we need legal immigration, not only because we've always had it, but it's what's built the country. And we know that people who come here for the right reasons have added to the richness of our history. But at the same time, it's got to be legal. We've got to do a better job at the border. We cannot allow the bad people who want to come here to hurt us, or people bringing in drugs. I mean, that's the bottom line.
All right, this is the debate for the 22nd Congressional District. Of course, the seat currently held by Richard Hanna. These are the Republicans that are challenging for that seat: George Phillips, Claudia Tenney, Stephen Wells. We'll come back in just a moment. Give you guys a bit of a break, about 3 minutes, and we'll get right back into this.